told quite abruptly that we shouldn't be telling the child. We should let children stay children. We should let children stay children.
I don't remember hearing much else, but she said, "You have cancer." She was, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And I said, "Honey, everything's gonna be fine."
Many mothers face the moment when they're told they have breast cancer, an experience my own mother went through when I was just 10 years old. As a child, it's hard to understand. As a parent, it's harder to know how to explain. And if that isn't challenging enough, the lack of resources for families during this time can make it even harder. That's why I created Tiny Ears Big Topics, a podcast exploring the books, shows and media that help children understand and cope with a parent's cancer diagnosis. But before looking at what exists now, I wanted to understand what was missing back then. So I started at home by speaking with my mum. Hi, Mum.
Hi, darling. Just come through.
Oh, this looks good. What are you cooking?
It's just a spag bowl. If you want some, I can plate you some up. Just go and sit through in the dining room.
Oh, great, thank you. Obviously, you know, I'm doing a podcast about breast cancer and the lack of media surrounding it for children. I just wanted to hear a bit more about your experience. Obviously, I was very young at the time, so, you know, I don't know everything, but could you start off by telling me how you felt when you had to tell me and Jake you had cancer?
I told them that I had 2 children and I told them your ages. And she then said that they have a pack available to give to mums, obviously, that's just been diagnosed, to take home to go through with their children to try and explain it in a way that's not going to scare them. I took the pack home, read it when I got in, and I wasn't going to tell you straight away because I didn't think you needed to know, but as time went on and things were changing quite rapidly, you did need to know, but I still had to account of how old you both were. And I probably didn't tell you in the best of ways, really, because I just blurted it out over dinner, but it was a moment where I felt in that moment completely that it was a safe time to say it while we were all together, and yeah, I just come out with it.
How did you decide what you were going to tell me and Jake and what you were going to leave out?
Because it was just off the cuff, sitting at the table when I didn't even think what I was going to say at that time. It was just, I didn't really tell you anything apart from what was going on and what was going to happen next, because obviously you knew I was going into hospital then to have an operation, and you knew that I wasn't going to be the same when I came out, so I needed to just explain to you what was going to happen when I went into hospital. I didn't go into the depths of chemotherapy or radiotherapy after that because I didn't think straight away you needed to know all of it in one go, so I just explained my double mastectomy. So I thought because it was such a big change, you did both need to know that that was happening.
Did you feel like you had any guidance or support to help you explain it to me and Jake?
So in the pack, you obviously are given a step-by-step guide of what to tell the children, how far to go into depth of what you're telling the children, and also you're given a book that you can take home and read with your own children. It was quite a good book, really, and I actually was thankful for it because the whole book was about a son and a daughter, and obviously that's what our family is, so it fitted in quite well. You took to the book straight away, and I think you absorbed it more because you could relate. You enjoyed stories at the time. You was at that age where you could enjoy it. Jake, not so much. Maybe a DVD because he liked films at the time, like a short film or something like that. A little video game, something that would interest him more than a book would have been helpful. The pack also includes where you take part of it to your child's school and you sit down and talk to their teacher. So what you're telling your children at home, the teacher, if in case they've got any questions, because they're obviously at school at quite a bit, if they want to go to the teacher, you're telling your child both the same things. It's not any different to what's in that book.
What was the hardest part as a mum about having to have that conversation with us?
Because breast cancer is quite rife on the media, it can give you a poor viewing of what might happen. So the scariest bit is first question that you asked me was, are you going to die? And I can't answer that. Nobody knows. You know, if I had help more of those sort of questions, yes, the book was helpful, yes, the pack was helpful, but it didn't answer every question that was asked, and I didn't have the answers.
Looking back now, is there anything you wish had been available for families like ours?
Back then, obviously, you think you've got everything you need, but looking back now, I think the book was helpful, and I appreciated the book. However, groups would have been helpful for you and Jake to attend. You know, there's a lot of social media now which wasn't available then, but you've got like chats that you could chat to other children that were going through the same thing. It is very lonely, and I was worried about you and Jake being on your own because I didn't have the questions or the answers, and all I was worried about was how you two were feeling all the time.
At the end of our conversation, my mum said something that really stood out to me.
I'm really pleased you're doing a podcast because I'd like to hope 10 years on that mother that's going home that afternoon to tell their family is not in the same place that I was that day.
It highlighted just how important it is to recognise the people working in this space to create a better support system for mothers like mine. So that's exactly what I did. I went out and spoke to some incredible people within this space to find out what drives them to make a difference. But I'll let them introduce themselves and share their stories in their own words.
Mummy has a lump. It's growing in her body.
I'm Simone Baldwin.
It isn't meant to be there.
I'm the author of
So it
Mummy
might
Has a
make you
Lump.
feel
It's a
funny.
picture book to read with young
don't
children,
feel
aged from
alone.
about 4 years old. And the idea is that it's aimed to help explain a tumour diagnosis, whether that's
To want to
cancerous
come back
or
home again
benign.
To you, her family. It's okay to feel confused or scared. It's okay if people cry. Sometimes these things just happen and we don't really know why.
It's vague enough to help families decide how much detail they want to go into in explaining that illness diagnosis, and can be used for many different types of illness. When I was diagnosed, I found that there was a lack of resources specific for me, so the idea of this is it can be used for a range of
She'll do
diagnoses.
the best she can in her own new mummy style. But we know Mummy loves you and the great team you will make.
I'm Elke Thompson. I'm a graphic designer, paper artist and children's book author. I got a diagnosis of a very aggressive breast cancer. I was already writing books to explain death to very young children because they weren't out there at the time. And ultimately, obviously, I had to have that conversation with my kids to tell them that I had breast cancer. I obviously found it difficult, but I didn't find it impossible. And I'm very passionate about being honest with children. But I know a lot of families struggle to help their kids with these conversations because they feel like they want to protect them, and we all do, but I feel very passionate that we protect children with the truth more than we protect them by pretending something that is happening is not happening.
So my name is Marcy Greenberg Cox. I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in 2018. I actually found it because I felt a lump when I was doing a self-exam in the shower. My kids were actually 1 in 5 at the time that I got diagnosed. So it's been 7 years. I'm a 7-year survivor. And so I created it because I ended up doing a double mastectomy without reconstruction.
And her boobies are gone too. Mommy is very happy about this.
And many women will go through reconstruction. I opted not to. And so I couldn't really find a lot of material that talked about a woman staying flat. So I said, I'm going to write something. And that's how Mommy Has a Boo Boo came to be.
Yes, so my name's Caroline Leake. I'm the CEO of Fruit 5 Collective. And we're a non-for-profit organisation that supports parents diagnosed with cancer. We've been around for about 12 years. And we're a collection of clinicians or therapists, nurses, psychotherapists, and then also parents with lived experience. So that can be any cancer type, any prognosis, and any family dynamic.
Now that we've gotten to know each person a little better, I wanted to dig a bit deeper. So I started by speaking to Caroline Leake and Elke Thompson about what inspired them to create media for children. And interestingly, they both brought up the same book that I was given as a child.
Well, my dad died of cancer when I was 12, and that was after a very short prognosis, and it was the 80s, so like nobody spoke about cancer then. It was the big scene, it was all the hush hush, and there was certainly no resources or anything like that, and it wasn't deemed to be appropriate to talk to children about cancer. And I was 12, my mum told me, but I don't think she really understood what cancer was. And then he died, and then I went off and had a career in science and stuff. But around when I had my own children, I suddenly started to wonder, what is out there. So I started to look, and there was nothing. There was the book that you were mentioning, the Mummy's Got a Lump, and that's it really. And I couldn't believe after so many years, for me it was like 20 odd years, that there was still nothing available, and nothing really that supported a family learning together rather than, here's a book, give it to your child. It's more exploring actually understanding what the disease is, understanding why people have different types of treatments and the side effects and the impact of that and how that generally can change family life.
Back then there was a book available called Mummy's Lump, which was actually really, really good. And I thought, oh well, Mummy's Lump's out there, I don't need to do it. I don't need to write it because I'd written the books about death and that was fine. But then they kind of discontinued it. And I thought, well, that book was really, really helpful to me. So why don't I write my own version of our own story? Which is what I did. I also wrote a book because I felt very strongly if I write a book about cancer where mummy gets better, I also need to write one where mummy dies. So I did write one, but I have yet to find a way to have it published because people just don't want to talk about it. They're so frightened of having these conversations with their children. And I did so much research and I interviewed so many families who had been in that position where, there was an incurable cancer diagnosis. And I thought, if you have that, at least you'll have all that time, to make memories and to say goodbye, which is what I didn't have when my husband died because he had a heart attack and he was there literally 1 minute and not the next. And what I found was that a lot of people didn't do that because they were too frightened to speak about it with their children, certainly, but they also didn't want to think about it because they wanted to make best use of their time. And then when the time came to make those memories, they weren't well enough to make them. And I felt so strongly there should be something out there. I think there's still so much work to be done, especially about being honest with children, not just about cancer, but about everything, about life. Like, why are we so frightened to say how life works? Why is that? I don't understand.
It seems to be a common concern among many parents that they want to protect their child by not telling them, even though they know they need to, they just don't know how. Caroline Leake at the Fruit Fly Collective explained the media and resources they've created to make the conversation much easier for families.
We've done animation, so we did a big animation and that then was translated into a comic, so like a much more of a sort of a friendly, non-frightening, quite sort of easy digestible way of consuming, kind of difficult information. And then we've also done books, children's books. We've done whole toolkits. So the toolkits themselves they are for different ages. So there's one for 3 to 5 year olds, 6 to 11, and for sort of 12 and upwards. And within those toolkits, there are tools that support the understanding. So there's always a book for parents to understand why it's really good to be honest and open with your kids and how to respond to maybe their reactions. But also within the kit, there are lots of different ways of kind of helping emotional well-being around that. We've got packs of cards, so it normalises those conversations about cancer. So on the 52 card pack, every card has got a question that a kid is likely to want to ask, and on the back we've suggested potential sort of kind of answers that they can have.
Having explored some of the resources and media from the Fruit Fly Collective, I wanted to hear a little bit more from Caroline about why it's so important to have these conversations with children and why how we approach them matters just as much.
Loads of research now that shows that children that aren't that are left in the dark or are just not told, they don't have as good outcomes as kids that are told. So children tend to be, even little ones, they're very egocentric, so they will pick up things very easily. So it might be mum or dad's on the phone more, less engaged, have less patience maybe with the kid, and actually often they think that it's something to do with them, so they are to blame. So they often internalise that and think, well, I've done something, I've said something, or I haven't done something. And so actually it's really important that parents can sort of first of all talk to them and say, this is not about you, this is something that's happened. As well as, I think us adults often think that children don't know anything about cancer, but actually we did school education programmes. We went into primary schools and we taught over 1,000 children between the age of 9 and 11, and every single child knew something about cancer. Majority of it was rubbish, so we were able to then dispel those myths.
In line with Caroline, Simone Baldwin, during her experience in education, echoing many of the same points and highlighting the impact on children's mental health when they aren't told.
My background is in teaching and specifically with additional learning needs, and it's shown me that we need to move away from pretending protecting children from the truth and instead support them through it, but in a way that's appropriate to their age and their stage of development. Parents are the best people to know how much information their children can manage, but I believe that it is important to respect their children's need to make sense of what they're seeing and feeling rather than feel excluded. I believe, and I know there's a lot of research going on now to show that there's more anxiety if children do feel excluded and those feelings aren't addressed and supported, particularly from a sort of more of a trauma-informed approach. And one final point on that is that I believe that it can be a worry for children, and we need to offer reassurance that it's nothing the child has done when things like this happen.
Elka Thompson explains that while it's important to be honest with your child, it's equally as important not to overwhelm them with too much detail. She also highlights how vital trust is, because losing that trust can be one of the biggest mistakes when telling your child you have breast cancer.
You know, there's also a lot to be said about oversharing. I'm not advertising oversharing and frightening the bejesus out of everybody, you know, but if a child asks you a question, then find the best version of the truth. You know, when I was diagnosed with my aggressive breast cancer, and I said to my kids, I sat them down, I have 7 kids because I have 5 stepdaughters as well, so at the time they were kind of aged 3 to 15. I knew that if I said to them, I have breast cancer, certainly my kids would know that that means I could die, because one of my best friend's sister had just died from breast cancer, and they knew what death was because their daddy had died. And the first question that Alex asked was, my son, he was 6 at the time, he said, "Are you going to die now, mummy?" And I looked at him and, you know, I was thinking, well, what's the best version of the truth? So I said, do you know what? It's a possibility, but the doctors have told me there's lots of medicine they can give me that will hopefully help me get better. If you're not honest, and if you withhold information or you downright lie about it, children will find out anyway, sooner or later, and then you've lost your kids' trust. And I think that's far more dangerous than telling them about the facts of life.
Yeah, so when I was searching, I mean, I definitely found a lot of books that were related to breast cancer. And I even know now there's more ladies in my breast cancer groups that are actually becoming authors now and writing books on their experience as well. Because I never thought I was going to be an author. And then, you know, I ended up writing it because of my experience. And that's how a lot of authors become authors.
Marcy also runs a YouTube channel where she documented her journey, answered questions, and offered support to mothers going through the same thing.
I want to do these videos so people know what's real. So about a week ago, I found something on my breast.
Good morning. Wanted to give everybody an update. I finally picked my surgeon. Hi everyone. Thought I would do an update. I'm pretty out of it. I'm on a lot of medication. Pain isn't really too bad. Some of you know already, but I have decided to stay flat. I did some pink hairdo today. Thought I'd get a little fun with it before I start chemo. I celebrated 2 years being cancer-free on January 18th, so amazing, yay!
Marcy's YouTube videos have enabled her to build a community that, as my mother mentioned at the start of the podcast, is something she wished she had for herself and her children. Having voices like Marcy's, along with the other authors and professionals I've interviewed, highlights that we're moving in the right direction. But is it enough? I want to explore how much real progress has been made over the past 10 years in terms of diversity, representation, and overall change. So I asked whether they think so too.
I see people talk more openly about it, but I don't think I can. You know, I see glimpses of it, but I think that's probably because I move around in that sort of bubble.
It's definitely still lacking. I've not really seen many books with Black people in it or Asian people in it. And so as I was writing, because I actually have a total of 10 books. So besides The Mommy Has a Boo Boo, I actually ended up writing about a child who has cancer, who learns that they have cancer. And I did just that. I made a boy and a girl version, but then I've got Caucasian, I've got Black, I've got one who's Mexican and one who's Indian, because I want these kids to see themselves in these books.
We need to be broad. I always try to be very careful not to assume a skin colour in my book. I tried to keep sort of faces out of it as much as possible so that it could be relevant to as many people as possible. It's tried not to have a picture of a house, because I didn't want it to assume that it wouldn't be relevant to people living in a flat. You know, there's lots of considerations with the book. You're trying not to tailor it to one particular demographic or one particular culture. It's very hard, particularly when you want to have pictures. You're trying to make it relevant to as many groups as possible.
The lack of representation in children's media is disheartening, especially to hear that even 10 years on there's still such a significant gap. However, the growing presence of books and media that don't assume a specific family dynamic or living situation suggests that we're moving in a more inclusive direction. I then wanted to speak to Caroline Leake to explore whether over the past decade things have shifted more towards a digital platform given the age we live in. As my mother mentioned at the beginning, my brother might have benefited more from something digital rather than a book. So here's her perspective on that.
I definitely, because it's going to engage way more kids and older kids as well. And I don't want to be gender specific whatsoever, but boys tend to, parents have said that they are sometimes more tricky to be able to engage with. So if they're already in that gaming world, then amazing. So I know that Minecraft was done with a charity called Ruth Strauss Foundation.
A clip from BBC's Northwest explains the video game.
Centre has been replicated within the game itself. So that means that patients, when they go in, they can explore it and see what it looks like before they actually visit it in real life. Such a good idea.
So it demystifies the whole thing, makes it slightly less scary for those children. Brilliant.
So if you've got kids that are into that anyway, then actually it's normalising it, isn't it? Suddenly like, oh, you can go on this quest or you can go on to this world or whatever. And so I think those kind of things are brilliant. And there used to be one called Tumour Takedown as well. I don't know whether that's still available. But again, you're blasting it. It's a bit like sort of Star Warsy type thing, and you're blasting the tumours and all of that sort of stuff. And it doesn't really matter really what it is generally if it enables conversation and it enables the kids to learn. And for some children, they don't want to engage with their parents because they feel often it's too awkward, or it feels like you're going to make them more stressed, or you don't want to burden them or whatever. So having that kind of outsource of a kind of information that's appropriate for you, or in the right format, can be just as valid as whatever. So yeah, I think they should have all different types of formats.
After speaking with Caroline, Marcy, Simone and Elka, I think we can all collectively agree that over the past decade there has been some improvement and development, particularly in being more open with children about cancer, using more honest language, and in individuals sharing their experience through books and social media. I wanted to explore and try out some of these resources with my mum and share what I've discovered while working on this podcast. So as you know, for the podcast, I've been able to speak to loads of authors. Then I went down to London and I spoke to Caroline Leake at the Fruit Fly Collective, and she gave me some resources that I thought we could go through. Because like we said at the beginning, there's not much out there, and there wasn't when we were younger. So I thought, let's see what they have now. So we could play one. But let's start with this one. So this is essentially a board game, and you kind of go through it, and it's a way that the child can ask questions. I don't know if you want to have a look at it.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So they move around the board, landing on certain areas?
So with the figurines, you obviously move across, and underneath each point, there's questions that the child can ask to the parent. So essentially, like you said, it's not making it awkward and
and they can ask the questions that they want to ask without it being, I suppose, they're inquisitive, aren't they? They want to know. No, I like that idea. It's really good.
So do you think this would have been beneficial for me,
Jay? Good. We loved board games. You loved your Monopoly and everything else. So to make this into a game, I think is much more interactive and less awkward for both me and yourselves. So it would have been a great idea.
Yeah, I thought the same. And I think they have so many variations of this from all different kinds of cancers and tumours. And they've also got it if your parent is... if the parent's going to pass away. So it's the sort of questions that, the child might not think of. It kind of comes from an adult's perspective, but for a child.
But it opens things up, doesn't it? So it does give you that two-way conversation then. It's involved a lot from when, obviously, we had anything. It's come on a long way.
Yes.
I think it's very good.
So as well as games, they also have loads of materials that kind of make it more easily digestible for parents and children. So as well as the games, they also have information sheets for a parent and child, because I remember you said at the beginning where you were given loads of information but all at once.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in and to look after myself and to get information across to you so you knew everything that was going on.
The way you say it to me and Jake when we were younger, it's going to affect you know, how we grow up and see things, and when it comes to like health.
So would this help in all ages? It could be adapted for all different ages?
Yeah, there's lots of different sections, so they have different materials, even for like secondary school age, which obviously there was nothing for us.
No.
So, yeah.
No, that's really good.
So, as well as those resources, they also have card games. And I feel like this could work maybe for children slightly older, maybe like 10 and up.
Yeah.
So, essentially, the way it works is we'll just play the game as we are. And then on each card, there is questions on there.
Right.
But underneath, there's a little paragraph. So, if the parent obviously doesn't know the answer, they can just read the card.
Right.
Let's actually have a play and then... Okay, this one's interesting. So, for example, it says, will I still be able to go to school if mummy or daddy are ill? And I feel like that's a very common question a child could have.
Good, yeah.
So it literally gives the answer. So it's like, it gives suggestions that the parents could say. So this one says, you'll still be able to go to school, however, the person picking you up might change. And I feel like that's...
So it's answering what the question is on the card.
Yeah.
That's so good, yeah.
So it's the child asking the question and the parents got the answer straight away.
And it takes it away from the parent.
Exactly, no pressure on it.
That's really
let's
good.
go through a couple more. So they also have... How will mummy look after the surgery?
Yeah.
So then again, it gives you loads of different suggestions. And with these cards, you can get it for all different cancers, tumours. Yeah. And again, I know Caroline said, because when she was going through her dad having cancer, she wished she had something that also explained that her dad was going to die and the sort of questions that were on there.
Yeah, answers that then. And also, you're not going to play the whole pack in one go, so you can get these out at another time, play it again, and you're going to get the different answers to different questions as you're going along. I think it's a great idea. And also you can play it with other family members, so if you've got, you know, the nieces, nephews, or, you know, even their friends that are going to be around them, you could play it with, you know, their friends.
So as well as the games, they also had one, because I was speaking to Caroline Leake, and obviously it's 10 years now since you had breast cancer.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to her, I was a bit worried because we were speaking about how I might have the gene. And she actually gave me this resource about basically how you would tell me, or on here as well, it has questions that maybe I want to know. And obviously I knew nothing about what's
coming up next.
Yeah. So on here it had loads of different questions that I should probably be asking.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not exactly the target audience because I'm obviously 21 now.
But you have got questions.
I have got questions, and because it is 10 years since, I think, you know, the fact that these resources are available even for people my age, because I'm not going to know, I'm only 21, so I think, you know, having it in easily. And again,
I don't have all the answers, so to have it there to help us have that conversation again.
Exactly. So, and it's really easy to digest for both of us as well, because I think, you know, when it is really overwhelming, or you get like, you search it up, it's probably the worst thing you can do.
I mean, you Google how to ask things and it comes up with, it's so, you know, it takes the emotion out of it, where I think this helps with the emotion side, you know, it's asking those questions that nobody wants to ask.
Overall, I can see, since I was a child, 10-year-old Molly would be so pleased that young girls today have access to media that explains what their mum was going through in such a less frightening way. To end the podcast, I wanted to ask each person one final question. What guidance would you offer a parent who's just been diagnosed with breast cancer on how to have the conversation with their child?
I think initiating the conversation is difficult, especially because you have to deal with the facts yourself. And I remember it's one thing having to explain a diagnosis or, you know, an event that a different person has suffered to being told you might die. You know, it's a completely different kettle of fish because you're so emotional and all you can think is, am I going to die? Like, I'm not done yet. But I think be clear with yourself first and be in a place of knowing, you know the facts, know what's going to happen. You know, maybe unless they ask a question, don't tell them when you're in that limbo between diagnosis and plan of action, you know, and then just say the facts and go with the flow. Just say, you know, depending on their age, you know, if they're older, they know what cancer is. Just start gently and just say, look, this is the diagnosis, this is what's definitely going to happen, and then just go with the flow and answer questions, but create a space that's safe for children to ask questions, and don't make fun of them. You know, if they ask, oh, is cancer contagious? You're like, know. Like, don't do that. You know, make them feel safe in the questions that they're asking and take them seriously and really listen to what they're asking.
It's okay to feel confused or scared. It's okay if people cry, and sometimes these things just happen and we don't really know why.
Generally, we say if you start to prepare yourself, if the parent prepares themselves for that conversation, they often feel a bit way more in control. So we sort of say to break it down into 3 sentences or 3 kind of things. First of all, name it. So say cancer, even for little ones, because they'll hear it at some point. And often that word it's not loaded for them. And then the second one is describe what cancer is. So some parents have said there's a party in my body that shouldn't be there, or there's a lump that shouldn't be there, or whatever. It's kind of like whatever, it's age appropriate for the child. And then the third one is like, what is going to happen, an outcome, because that's what kids want to know. There's a solution, someone's looking after you. And even if the parent doesn't know or anything like that, or you can just say, but there's a team of doctors and nurses that are going to be helping me, and that's it. And generally that's what kids want. They just want to know that something's going to be done and you're being truthful and honest. And sometimes it can be, some kids want to know more, some kids don't want to know more, and often parents are really reluctant to have those first conversations because they don't feel like they are got all the information yet. So we say, that's fine, you can just write it down. If they've got questions, say, this is my question pad, and we're going to write it down. I'll go back to my healthcare team and we can work this out. And the key thing really is to know that they are going to be told whatever happens, so they don't have to become these hyper-vigilant kids. I don't know whether you became a hyper-vigilant kid where you're constantly second-guessing what, you know, your parents thinking or seeing. So there might be a look that you've interpreted going, oh, there, you know, something is happening. So if the parent is upright and upfront rather than said, you know, if there are any changes, you'll be the first to know. And like, we've heard lots of kind of different scenarios where some teens, I remember, was saying about how they could hear their mum and dad whispering all the time, and that made them really anxious. And so they told them that, and they were like, oh, we were just working out what to tell you. And they were like, oh, okay, as long as you can carry on whispering, as long as like we have the headlines, you know, we don't want the whisper, we don't need that bit of information, we just need the headlines. And once they clarified that, then that was fine. They could go to school, they can go out with their mates and everything, and they always knew that their parents are going to tell them if there were any changes or whatever.
I always tell people, you know, you're going to get to where you are, or if not, I mean, things might change a little bit, and that's okay. But once you get through this bump, you'll get into your new norm, is really what it comes down to.
Marcy also shared how she turned her experience into something positive for her friends and family by hosting a Bye Bye Boobie party.
The outcome wasn't going to change, so I said I might as well have fun with it. And so I invited all my girlfriends. My mom was there, my aunt was there. I didn't let the boys be there, but we played games. I had pin the boob on the woman. I got little boob candies. So, you know, I just made it fun. I mean, I put together a playlist of songs like NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye, and then Survivor, like I Will Survive. You know, it was just kind of making fun of it, like, hey, they're going. And I remember too, like, even when my girlfriends came in, I was in my bathing suit, bikini top, so you could see, you know, that I had boobs. And then towards the end of the day, I put on my Survivor shirt. But, you know, I just had to have fun with it. I mean, like you said, it is what it is. I wasn't going to change it. I had breast cancer, and, you know, I had to just move forward.
This was Tiny Ears, Big Topics, created and produced by myself, Molly Woodward. I'm incredibly proud of this project, and I've made it for all the younger Mollys out there to help make this scary chapter of their life feel that little less frightening. Thank you so much to everyone who contributed to the project, and a very special thank you to my mum, who I know found it difficult to share her story, but I'm so grateful she did. That's all from me.